Can you make a delicious drink without having done a lot of research and exercises in tasting? I think the answer is yes, because it's the same with really cooking. You can follow a recipe. You can make something really nice. Then I think if you want to go into the next level of things and you want to either adapt a recipe, put a twist on the recipe of your own, or you want to create something from scratch, then you're into the territory where you really need to know what you're doing. I often think of it as a flavour library in your mind. Look at a decorator, they know all the different shades of white, and your job when you're making drinks is to know all the different versions of an ingredient as possible.
Apple is kind of one of those ingredients where you have to really understand what you want from the ingredients, I'd say, because apples that you would make into cider or make into spirits are very different from apples you would eat or apples you would maybe cook with.
Try a little bit of the russet there. You can see the skin is really, really rough and the flesh is quite white and it feels quite dry.
It's quite delicate, I would say, the flavour.
Yeah. It's quite nutty. It's not sweet like the apples that you might buy in a supermarket now. It's kind of a lot more subdued in its sweetness.
It's very enjoyable to eat, but it would be a little bit more challenging, I think, to use it in a drink because it doesn't have, for example, the acidity that you would look for.
Let's move on to the Jazz apple. This has got a very defined flavour. It smells like pear, almost kind of nail varnishy pear.
Almost kind of floral element to it.
This is the Mary Red. Quite white inside.
It looks like the perfect cartoon apple.
Yeah.
A bit more kind of bright in its presence. This one is a bit more nuanced.
What should an ingredient actually taste like? I think probably the best way of knowing is to try it fresh. Like if you try a truffle, you have a proper fresh truffle and it's got all of that complexity of flavour. And then you try something like the truffle oil, does not have that sublime quality. It just gives you a kind of basic idea rather than the kind of the beauty and the richness.
We talked a bit about using your travels to build your flavour library, but I think it's important to think you don't have to always go somewhere. We're here in Ridley Road Market. Wherever you live, you'll be able to find somewhere, some corner of your city or town that has a shop to explore. I mean, there's just shops from all around the world. It's so much more exciting if you're building that kind of flavour library. You have the shops all along that are just these caves full of interesting things that you haven't seen, you might not have tasted before, or different variations of the things that you know.
One of my favorite things to do is always to go to markets because I think you understand also the ecology and the society that you visit.
充分理解素材，我认为是非常重要的，因为所有的食材都有季节性。那你对风味的把握也没有这么的成功的展现，会因为季节性而有非常多的变化。台湾 local 食材做调酒吗？我们用了蛮多的，像是台湾的乌龙茶，还有绿茶。我觉得重要也不重要，因为是看这一季我需不需要。当然，有的时候用了台湾 local 食材，对本地人来说，他们会非常的熟悉，那他们也更容易可以接受。
So when you visit the spice market in Seoul here, you can smell kind of all the spices. So you just follow the smell and then you smell this ingredient and that ingredient and then slightly link to your drinks. So how can we use these flavors to this cocktail? When I started bartending just 10 years ago, I put all the ingredients I like in one cocktail, spirit and syrup and other things. So all the tastes are there. So I can feel all the tastes separately, but in general, the drink is not delicious. So good plus good doesn't mean the best. So we need to figure out how can we make the delicious drinks, not just mixing everything. Most of our classic cocktails or spirits are made from Western culture. Lots of bars want to put spirit and liquors from abroad, but we think in Korea there are lots of liquors and spirits as well, or regional products all over the region. So we start to use that ingredient to our cocktails. So we try to deliver kind of different experience what they have before, and then guests are happy.
The more you can set the right sort of expectations or rich sensory expectations about a drink, the better. And you see that in everything from the back of wine labels through these days to even water bottles will tell you what you should be expecting to taste in the drink. And one can think of a drinks menu along similar lines, that people will find it much easier to unpack, to identify those various elements in a drink if they have been labelled or signposted in advance. A lot of what we experience is around what we expect to experience, and those sensory descriptive labels can really help to kind of elevate the experience. And for me, it's really part of flavour as well.
If you can find a way of actually making something sound like that and live up to it, then you've really hit the, you've hit the jackpot. The language is really important. It's your pitch. Having that expectation built by somebody just making it sound like, ooh, that's something to play with. Part of making the drink is pitching the drink.
menu 的设计是非常重要的。那内容的叙述需不需要多？我觉得要看想呈现的样子是什么。在 Run 的话，我们的 menu 的叙述是非常少的，因为我们也希望透过述说来告诉你这一集我们在呈现什么样的事情。但是对我来说 ，menu 它就像是一部电影的预告片一样，告诉你大概会发生什么事情，但是这所有的内容会在这个空间里面产生。
So on the menu we have some illustration and then the topics, and then after that we have some different type of cocktails, and then if needed we give a little more explanation of the flavors to make our guests know what they drink, what they experience. So Korean language is so diverse and large. We can describe even small kind of word like sour. So we can say 상큼하다, 시큼하다, 시다, or 새초롬하다. This all meaning like sour, but a little bit different type of sour taste.
So, Monica, when you see those menus and the drinks they might have a name and then there's no context for them, it's just some ingredients. It will say orange, fennel, bergamot, say.
I think that requires a lot of work in the interaction between the person serving and the person drinking.
Yeah.
Because for a menu to be that stripped and minimalistic, which is something we do as well, it needs to have either a point of reference. So for example, in our menu in elementary, we would then list what kind of glass it comes in, and then you would have a name that is like cherry whiskey sour, jasmine mai tai, so that you can reference it.
There are lots and lots of ways that we can describe things. You have to find a way of pressing those buttons. You want to find a way of communicating to someone that makes them respond positively. It's an agreed culture between the person who's selling and the person who's buying. I mean, that feels to me like the difference between somebody who's a professional and someone who's an amateur.